Good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Rabbi Chaim Belyak. Uh, on screen with me in a moment will be our guest, Menachem Mirski. I'm welcoming
Yes,
you
ma'am.
today to a program that we call Freighted Legacies. It's an opportunity for us to encounter uh, the history, the culture that is mutual to many people from Poland, uh, Jews, and Catholics. We share through the wonderful work of Zoom uh, the possibility of being heard in several languages, which allows me to call your attention to the bottom of your screen, where you'll find a globe. And if you press on that globe, you'll be able to choose either English or Polish. And today, uh, our Polish American rabbi Menachem Mirski will be speaking in English, but will be heard by our Polish listeners in Polish. Marzena, thank you for being a part of our program. And today we're going to uh, hear something about the journey of Menachem to being a rabbi. Um, and I've been privileged to know Menachem since the last 15 years. And it's an opportunity for us uh, to learn about his thinking, how he's evolved from the person that I met 15 years ago to the rabbi of Beth Shalom in Long Beach, California. I'm going to dispense with my usual description of the guest's uh, biography because that's, in a sense, the purpose of today is to hear how Menachem has developed. I want to acknowledge two things about Menachem, though. One, that he is uh, mobilizing himself for us today after bout with bronchitis. So we wish you a refuah shlema, a complete recovery. And the second thing is that I was privileged recently to be a part of Menachem's wedding, and uh, I think that's part of the story of an evolution of Menachem, um, who we want to wish a mazel tov on his wedding. Actually, he's been married over a year ago, but this was his Jewish wedding that we recently attended. Um, and so, Menachem, I'm going to begin by not only welcoming you now, but inviting you to share your thoughts. We're going to listen, and then I think people will be interested to ask questions. Um, and helping us with the questions is Dominika Zakaszewska, uh, who at some point in the future we will also uh, ask to tell us a little bit about her Jewish journey, her personal journey. And this is part of what we from Friends of Jewish Renewal are seeking to tell people about the wonderful people we've met in Poland, many of whom have become rabbis, many of whom have been involved in Jewish life. And we look forward to learning about them because their Jewish identity, their uh, uh, identity as human beings, is a way of understanding some very interesting spiritual activities in Poland. So, Menachem, if we can have you back on the screen, we're going to make you the center of things. Welcome. Go ahead. So, I guess the first question is, we have like seven stages of this, um, and I'm not going to stop to ask you questions, but invite you to sort of tell us the story of your own transformation. I met you when you were a graduate student, um, about to begin your undergraduate, about to begin your graduate studies, I should say. Uh, a very
Oh, I think it was a little later. Yeah, I was. We met in 2008, 2009, I believe. I came back from Stockholm from Paideia, so I already had a graduate degree in philosophy from 2005 from UMCS in Poland in Lublin, and then I was
Okay.
already on my Jewish journey when we met, I believe, and I came back from the 1 year Jewish studies program at Paideia in Stockholm at that time. Yeah, I think it was in summer, and Rabbi Bert Schumann, Zichrono Livracha, was there, was then a rabbi of Beit Warszawa.
So tell us a little bit about how you got to Paideia, how you got even involved in Jewish life.
Okay, so basically, my transformation starts in my early 20s. Um, I was looking for something in my life. I mean, for meaning, because we lacked it in a way. And I saw a lot of things happening to my family that I saw as um, unfair, bizarre, unjust, and weird, and a lot of suffering, a lot of unnecessary. I didn't know what to do with this when I was growing up. That was one of the reasons I decided to study philosophy. I was looking for answers to the questions I had, and mm, in my early 20s, during my philosophical program at Maria Curie Skłodowska University, I was actually at the beginning of my philosophical journey, I was a militant atheist. I hated religion in all kinds of shapes in every shape or form. Um, and I was very rebellious, and there were many reasons for that. But one of the reasons was that I couldn't stand the dominant surrounding religion in Poland, and mainly because of the hypocrisy I saw and the way the social life developed in Poland in the 90s, um, from communism to, I believe that Catholic Church, um, that they granted themselves a reward that they didn't deserve at all. I was pissed off. Sorry for using those words. I was very upset when I saw the power grab they did, the religion at schools, the money, the corruption, and the marriage of Polish Catholicism with politics. It was abhorrent to me as a teenager and as a young man. But then something changed. Um, it was 2003, quite in the middle of my philosophical journey. I got into a very bad accident. A few thugs attacked me when I was coming back from a party when it was the third year of my philosophical studies, and I was coming back from a party after one of the exams, and I got almost killed, seriously beaten up, and I ended up at ICU, intensywnej terapii, um, for a week, and then I had a surgery, open skull surgery, and this event changed me fundamentally. Um, from a militant atheist over a few months, I became a spiritual person. My reasoning was that I challenged my beliefs fundamentally. Before I believed everything that is in a typical playbook of a rebellious, secular um, young person in the West, namely everything is relative, there are no norms, morality, ethics is relative, is a function of power and imposing social order and all this all these things, let's call it gently, without judgment. And then I realize, no, I actually experienced absolute evil, and there was no context I could put it to justify it and to say it. Oh, it was okay. It was relative. There's some way of looking at this, what happened to me, that it's good. It wasn't good, and then I realized that if there is absolute evil, there may be absolute good as well. And maybe that was something philosophers, spiritual people, rabbis, and um, um, intellectual intellectuals throughout the ages were looking for. So that was my intellectual transformation that resulted in a spiritual transformation and a social and psychological transformation. So that, long story short, and that marked the that was the first, I would say, um, turning point in my spiritual journey. So I decided to embrace faith. However, I was not able to accept the faith of the dominant faith that was surrounding me at that time in Poland, for the same reasons I just mentioned. I didn't believe the story. I believe it was made up, and I still believe it was made up to control people. And I saw why some so values in this kind of religiosity. I couldn't become a part of this camp, so to say. And I started looking for other spiritualities, and Judaism spoke to me uh, profoundly. And then I discovered my Jewish roots. So over a few years. So that's basically. I'm gonna let you ask questions right now. Maybe
So,
let's
but
move to.
having heard a piece of this story, I know that music played a role in the discovery of your
Yes,
Jewish.
yes. Music always played a fundamental role. Uh, I think it was after I finished after I finished my master's degree in philosophy in Lublin. I was a musician all the time throughout my since I was 11. I started with heavy metal bands, Metallica, and some hard rock and things like that. And then towards the late 90s, I kind of changed my musical interest. Interest to start playing blues, jazz, um, under the influence of my colleagues. And back then in Poland, in Przemyśl, actually, that's where I was born. I'm still connected with some of my colleagues from that time, and they still do the same thing, and they still play music there, which is wonderful. Um, so after I graduated from the university, I started working at Grodzka Gate, excuse me, Brama Grodzka in Lublin, and I think it was 2006, and I was asked to prepare a program, or an artistic musical program for Shabbat dinner that was held in Grodzka Gate in Brama Grodzka, uh, regularly together, organized with the local Jewish community from the so-called yeshiva.
So,
Yeah.
Menachem, I'm going to interrupt because you're using the term Brahma Grodzka. You've talked about Lublin.
Mhm.
Give us background about uh, what it means to work at a place like Brahma Grodzka. What is it?
Okay, Brama Grodzka is an institution that is fostering a local culture and local history. Namely, it is an institution founded by Tomasz Pietrasiewicz, who came up with the idea of. Initially, it was founded as a theater, a cultural institution, one of the many cultural institutions in town, and then it evolved into hybrid institution. I would say it's a publishing house. They operate a website. They research the history of the oral history of Lublin. They do certain activities. They organize performances, theater performances, movie nights, and things like that. So it evolved into some sort of hybrid institutions that has many takes many actions into promoting local identity. Let's call it this way, of inhabitants of Lublin, of the town and history and so on. So they have their website where you can find all the history of the place from the very beginning. So they devoted themselves to research and promote history of Lublin.
Does it
And
do
yeah,
with Jews?
pardon?
Anything? Does it have anything to do with Jews?
Yes, exactly. That was a huge part in their development. In the late 90s, there was a governmental program, Małe Ojczyzny, that was called Little Homelands. We can translate it like this into English, and they sponsored all kinds of activities that were aimed at discovering local culture and local history and promoting local culture and history in various areas. So a lot of governmental money was put into those projects, and that's how this institution got uh, decided to actually do these things. There was a transformative situation for Brama Grodzka, and that's how they, over the years, um, they discovered history of Jewish history, including Jewish history in Lublin. Actually, their focus on Jewish history was predominant for several years because that was the part of the town that evaporated, that was destroyed during the war, and it was an adjacent part of the town to Brama Grodzka. Brama Grodzka is located symbolically between the Christian part of the old town in Lublin and the Jewish part, the non-existing part of the town, and that's what shaped the whole spirituality. I can absolutely say spirituality of this place. This place became Brama Grodzka is a spiritual place. It's a historical and spiritual place. You feel the history there. It's tangible. Um,
So,
so I became an editor. I was put in charge of editing, listening to all kinds of stories of the former Jewish district, Dzielnica Żydowska in Lublin, and those stories. When I was listening to them, now would AI probably do this job? Those days we didn't have AI, so a real person had to listen to the recording and write it down and edit it to something digestible, to something readable. And those stories inspired me. And then also I was asked by Tomasz Pietrasiewicz to perform this Shabbat concert that they also started organizing regularly. And that's how I got involved, and that's how I met Severin Ashkenazi, who was our community, Berit Warszawa community sponsor, founder and sponsor at that time. And he regularly, when he was in Poland, visited Lublin. And that's how we met. And that's how my involvement in the Jewish community started. I wanted to learn Yiddish because I felt, I felt deep. Rediscovered a deep connection to klezmer music I had since I was 11, I believe. When I started playing music, one of the genres that like extremely, besides heavy metal and all this stuff, one of the genres that extremely spoke to me was klezmer. I literally fell in love with all those melodies immediately, And I even recorded a cassette, amateur with my amateur music when I was, I believe, 14 years old. And then I found this cassette later on, many years later, in the late 2000s. And it turned out that most of those little songs I wrote were written on a Jewish scale. I wasn't, I, no, I was not really aware of that at that time. Um, uh, Later on, I realized that. Anyway, so yes, that music played a significant role, and I rediscovered my connection to klezmer in late 2000s when I started doing those Shabbat dinners. And I wanted to learn Yiddish, and I knew that there was a Yiddish course with Professor Monika Garbowska in Lublin, but at the time she was away in Stanford here, actually, in California for a year. But they offered me Hebrew. Uh, I joined Hebrew. I realized, oh, I'm gonna learn Hebrew. That's great. That's another language and the same alphabet I can later use in Yiddish if I wanna um, learn more Yiddish. And I started learning Hebrew, and it was interesting because it was an open class for every student of Maria Curie Skłodowska University, including non-students. Actually, everyone could come to the class from the street and register and attend. And what was interesting that the class, after the 36 people started the class, and after one semester we were just six. People gave up. Um, in the first semester gave up on learning alphabet, Hebrew alphabet. Became too difficult and too weird to them, so they quit. But those who were to stayed there. And in the second semester, Marzena Zawanowska, who was my Hebrew teacher, she brought flyers from Paideia, from the European Institute of Jewish Studies in Stockholm, and I immediately applied, sent my application. Maybe not immediately, it took me a while, but I sent my application and I was accepted, and I went there for a very intense year of Jewish studies, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was a wonderful time.
And this is
Um,
in Stockholm. There
Stockholm.
is Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah, Stockholm, Sweden, the beautiful town, beautiful Jewish community. When I got immersed in Jewish life, attending holidays and regular Shabbat prayers and studying Judaism 40, 50 hours a week was a wonderful venture, was a wonderful journey. And that was a transformative experience. And after that, I came back to Poland, to Lublin, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. Uh, I had to be back in line. So I decided to pursue two things. I decided to join the our progressive Jewish community in Warsaw. I knew Severin. I met with Rabbi Bert Schumann that year, 2009, and then Rabbi met with Chaim. I was shortly after finishing Paideia, and I decided to become a Chazan, cantor, because Beit Warszawa offered a course of Chazanut, how to lead Jewish prayer, and I decided at the same time to pursue my uh, PhD program in Jewish theological responses to Holocaust, which I can say a few words, but it was at that time, 2009, 2010, and I also had to convert because I wasn't recognized as Jewish for various for obvious reasons. I didn't know anything about my Jewish past, and it happened after I went to before I went to London for my Beit Din, and after I had my Brit Milah, adult Brit Milah, that my dad told me the story that he recalled from his childhood, that grandma he never met because she died during the war, uh, actually knew Yiddish and had a kosher grocery store in Drohobych before the war. So that was a revelation for me. I asked Dad, why didn't you tell me that before? And he said, so far I didn't remember it actually. I didn't think it was relevant at all. But it became relevant to me. And that's how all the puzzles kind of put together. And later on, I did my DNA tests here in the United States, and it showed part of Jewish ancestry in my heritage. So the story was confirmed. Um,
Menachem,
yeah,
I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit because we're listening to your story, but it's not a story that is just unique to you. It's something that we hear about from other people.
yeah,
Uh, and I want you to reflect a little bit about what it meant because you were not the only one who was
yes.
covering this. And
Oh,
um,
there was a typical pattern of it's a typical pattern of um, um, especially people who got intermarried in Poland with Polish people, Polish Catholics, Ukrainians, um, and decided to stay in Poland after the war and decided to hide the Jewish part of family or any part of Jewish identity. That if identity wasn't that strong to prevail, that pretty often people decided to erase completely and never talk about it again. And it depends. In certain cases, it was revealed. My story, the typical story says that grandma or dad or mom on the deathbed said, "You are Jewish." That's the typical story. I heard many times. It's a phenomenal thing. It happened to many people. In my case, it was a more distant, a little bit. My dad didn't tell me you are Jewish. He just said there were Jews in our family, and we have shared heritage, and I see that you reconnected with it, and that's wonderful. And they were always, my parents were always very supportive of that. So there was not, but they were not themselves and victims because they spared themselves before they were not victims of anti-Semitism because no one suspected they might have anything in common with Jewish people. So the story is slightly different than the regular story, but it's one of the ways of people of Polish people rediscovering their connection to Jewish past, Jewish culture, Judaism as such, and but it contains the same element of suppression, of a total suppression. And later on, when I came back from London after my Gior, I went to a dance party in Lublin, in one of the clubs in the city. There was I think Saturday night or something, and I met there accidentally with my theater teacher. Uh, I attended his theater workshops for a few years, and he approached me on the dance hall and he cuddled me and whispered to my uh, ear that he is Jewish too. He is halachically Jewish, and he never revealed to anyone. And I actually believe him, absolutely believe him. And he told me the very credible story. And actually, his mom was Jewish.
so
Uh,
Menachem, you're still going to Lublin. You're taking the classes to become a Jew and also to become a Schatz, to
yeah,
become a prayer leader, a lay cantor. But you're also studying philosophy. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your philosophy degree.
Okay. So I went back to the university after Paideia. I realized that after the Jewish studies program in Stockholm, I realized that that's something I need to spend maybe perhaps my life on. But I definitely realized that I'm gonna be studying anyway because studying Judaism and studying philosophy is an important part of my life. So my reasoning uh, why not to get another degree? Uh, People understanding Polish reality will understand why. And we didn't have a lot of opportunities still there, and it's still difficult to have a dream job in Poland in a way, especially if you have a certain sophisticated interests. So I decided not to come back on the track of. I decided to be a chazan, but at the same time, I decided to go back to the university and study and obtain well, PhD in philosophy, and I wasn't I wasn't delusional about the prospects of employment. For example, I was aware that it's very difficult in Polish academia to get a job. That was not my goal. I just wanted to study, and I was still looking for answers. And that was my PhD program was one of the biggest projects, intellectual projects of my life. I wanted to answer very problematic questions regarding the divine involvement in the events of the Second World War and Holocaust, and to research the topic of no, simply try to approximate the answer to the question, where was God in those dark times? And that was basically my research. I was exploring, I explored 20 concepts presented by various thinkers from different streams of Judaism, trying to approach this question. Uh, so it led me to a fundamental conclusion that um, the more ancient theology um, an individual had during that time. I'm going to give an example of ultra Orthodox, of Haredi Jews who, Haredi survivors of the Holocaust. Their mindset, their religious mindset was about looking at every event through the biblical lens or Talmudic lens or biblical or midrashic story. So they looked through everything that happened to them through the lens of Jewish spirituality. And this resulted in an interesting fact that if they survived, precisely because of that the way they look at reality, they not only didn't lose their faith, their faith often became stronger, because if they survived and they look at everything through the religious lens, it meant that they were saved miraculously for them. So Holocaust, this research answered my question why some people believe that Holocaust was actually the evidence, the proof of the divine existence, not the majority position that the Holocaust is a problem for theology, fundamental theology, that the Holocaust was the ultimate proof of lack of divine existence, of the God didn't exist. And I analyzed the opposite answer. So the opposite answer was exactly that. It's completely in line in what we know from philosophy, cognitive philosophy of 20th century. If you, whatever your beliefs determine your perception of the world. And here, your perception of the world then determines back your beliefs. So if a person believes that every bad or good thing happening in the world is a struggle between Esau and Jacob, this person is going to end up with a religious answer to why Jacob was killed or Esau was killed, and so on, to use an example. So that's more or less the summary of my work.
I'm going to just jump in and say that um, Menachem is a busy rabbi, and we're going to get to the stage of how he got to be a rabbi. But I challenge him because he has
Yeah.
promised that he's going to translate and update his PhD thesis for the English reading audience. And so I know he has a lot of spare time these days and
Yeah, a lot of spare
invite you
time.
to do that soon. I'm wondering if you, uh, I want to remind you that at one point, in addition to your working throughout Poland, helping prayer groups that were starting the progressive movement as a lay cantor, you also spent a lot of time on your PhD, but there was a moment where you thought you would be a full-time uh, musician. This was
Yeah.
before you went to rabbinical school. I know that that was at least something that you entertained as a possibility.
Oh, when I was doing my PhD program, I also was fully actually involved as a musician with our band. We created in Lublin. The band was called Klezmaholics. With my friends from Lublin, we traveled quite a lot. We visited at a peak of our activity. We had like 50, 60 concerts a year. So almost every week we had a gig somewhere. And it was great. It was a great experience, and we recorded two CDs. Still, of those days, we people recorded CDs. But anyway, um, so yeah, we were praying regularly and creating music. And but at some point, I realized that I'm gonna have to choose um, sacrifice. Well, there was a pressure. Let me put it this way. I felt the pressure from the environment around me, human environment, that actually I should choose something and either become a full-time musician or pursue a full-time career in the Polish academia. And I didn't want to make this choice actually. And then I realized that if I become a rabbi, I can do both at the same time, and I don't have to sacrifice anything. I can merge um, all the skills and all the everything I learned in my life into one job. So, and that's I realized that was my calling. That was my rabbinical calling, and since then, and it happened towards the end of the uh, 2015, 16, around that time when I was finishing my PhD program, and then I started to look for a rabbinical school. And it was again a very interesting situation, kind of miraculous story. It fell in line with my concept of miracles I developed in my doctoral dissertation, uh, that there are things that we believe are coincidental, spontaneous, but suddenly they make sense if you put them in line on a timeline, and you analyze events unfolding. It suddenly it's revealed to you that it's like it was like purposely designed to happen. It wasn't just a random thing. Every person that was involved there thought, "Oh, that's my idea. That's my idea. Let's invite." Chaim invited me to L.A. After I met with Cantor David Vishnya, who visited us, wonderful person. Uh, uh, may his memory be a blessing for us. He visited and Warsaw in 2015, and he led a service in Beit Warszawa, and he gave a concert, and then he came back again. I think he was there twice, and then the idea was born that me and Rivka and the other shots from cantor from Beit Warszawa would go to the United States and to perform concerts here in Los Angeles area. And the Haim, it was 2016, I believe, and in early 2016, and came up with the invitation to with an invitation to come here, and we were scheduled here 5 days after my doctoral dissertation, actually, defense. And I was working back then in Gdańsk, an Intel company, as a HR specialist. I had to get employed for some time. And then I quit this job to finish my PhD program, and I had literally nothing to do in Poland. And I had this visit schedule here for 2 weeks, and I knew there were rabbinical, and there are rabbinical schools here in Los Angeles. So I called Severin Ashkenazi and asked him, "Can I stay a little longer?" And he said yes. I could. I stayed at his house for a few weeks, and then I ended up being here for 5 months, exploring the Jewish life here, and I went to the Ziegler School. I went to Hebrew College as well, an Academy of Jewish Religion. There's two other rabbinical schools here, and I chose Ziegler. So I applied and I was accepted. And this supposedly spontaneous invitation to Los Angeles completely changed my life. And when I look back on the whole story, it totally makes sense. It was meant to be so, and was meant to happen this way.
So you're at rabbinical school. You're this is a 5-year program,
Yes.
uh, which you completed. Um,
5 or 6. I extended my program to 6. It was an option always. Now it's 4 or 5. Anyway, yes.
Rabbinical students are going out to teach Torah, to teach classes, to be in classes. You're pretty intensively busy. And in one of those events, you met the woman who is now your wife. Um,
Yes.
and uh, tell us a little bit about that, and uh, bring us into the Beth Shalom um, moment, and we're going to open it up for questions in a few minutes.
All right. Yes. So yeah, the rabbinical program is very intense. Is the only compare we can compare it only with law or medicine. That's the level of intensity. Again, you study 40 hours a week full time plus homework, and living in Los Angeles, you also have to pay your bills. So you have to make money to sustain yourself. So for the first 2 years, I was working 70, 80 hours a week, 5, 6 hours of sleep a day. But then it got a little lighter. And this third year, actually, it was the second year when I met Rivka. Yeah, I started to become a regular Torah reader in Mishkan Tfilah in Venice, here in one of the conservative synagogues. And that's where I started to regularly come to services and events, and I made friends there. And I met my wife, Rivka, Tiffany Rivka, and on Purim party in 2000. We met before, but we actually got together on Purim party. It was 2019, and we started dating, and we became a couple after a few weeks, and then COVID hit in 2020, and I had to. It had a devastating impact on my mm, I would say financial, my finances, on my work. So I decided to it sounds silly, it sounds pragmatic, but that's what people do, and that's the story. Many relationships are created into times of crisis. People make some decisions, and I decided to move in and live with my girlfriend um, during that time. And also there was like pandemic was people were separated and living alone was depressing in this situation. So um, I decided to move in with my girlfriend, and that's how we um, that's how we started living together full
Tell
time.
me, Menachem, you completed rabbinical school. How long have you been the rabbi at Temple Shalom in Long Beach? And tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about the congregation as you have experienced it in terms of what you're trying to build.
Okay, I was ordained in May 2023, so almost 3 years ago. And immediately I started to work at Temple Beth Shalom. I applied to several positions. That was my first choice, and I got this position. There were three other candidates, and I was selected. Um, the committee, the board made a report, 96 pages, and they decided after 3 weeks of deliberation that I was the best candidate. And then, well, I learned a lot, I would say, over this year and a half or so. Um, when you are a rabbi in a congregation like that, you are a solo, it's a solo pulpit, so I'm the only rabbi in the congregation. We don't employ a lot of people. There's literally six, seven people employed. Only two of us are full time. So it's a lot of work. It's a very intense work. I work 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. Um, and besides my regular duties, rabbinical duties like teaching, preaching, and outreaching, these are the fundamental three things that every rabbi has to do. I also need to do things outside my regular duties like organizing events, um, mm, concerts, cultural events, promoting things on social media, and all kinds of things related to advertising and so on. The community, it's the work is a little challenging because it's one of those communities that got super close and looking um, um, looking in the past, namely that they got stuck in their ways in a way, and they shrank over time. Uh, so, in order to grow the community like that, you have to make some changes. You have to introduce some changes. You have to bring new people, which is difficult for some people to accept. And there is a paradoxical situation sometimes that there's a Jewish community that wants to grow, but they don't actually like new people. It's strange, but there are families like that, right? Oh, we are open, we are welcoming. Are we actually really? And these are the challenges you have to, and making people aware of things like that is sometimes painful, and it creates conflict and it creates backlash. So my work as I mentioned, is very rewarding, but it's difficult because sometimes it involves telling people the truth, which is not sometimes sometimes not something pleasant. So you have to make, as a rabbi, the main challenge of my work is to make people aware of what they are doing actually, and this is something that's it's difficult sometimes to communicate.
So,
And yeah,
but there's a teaching of Judaism
Yeah.
that you're involved in. Um, and I also want to highlight the fact that you continue um, to teach and involve yourself in the Polish Jewish community. On a
Yes.
weekly basis, we have uh, a blog, which is a sermon, which we enjoy and learn from. And I will another challenge for you in your spare time will be to collect all of these sermons, which date now almost 7 years, 8 years of sermons, and edit them into a compendium. But also, you're teaching a new class for um,
Yes.
Friends of Jewish Renewal and Beit Polska in Poland called Turning Points in Jewish History. I
Yep.
think actually you're up this week to teach. Um,
Oh, okay.
okay.
Okay, good to know. Yes, all right. So I briefly, yes, that's the positive parts and challenging parts of community building. So I let me just put it briefly. Building community is like navigating a family. It's like growing a family. Being a rabbi in a community like that is like being a head of 100-ish, 170 people family, which is sometimes difficult because everyone has an opinion. And I will just mention what Golda Meir said, which is emblematic for Jewish community and Jewish people. Golda Meir said to Richard Nixon, um, President Nixon, you are a president of 150 million Americans. I'm a prime minister of 6 million prime ministers. So this is emblematic for Jewish people. Everyone is a rabbi, sometimes in the community. Everyone is leader. Everyone is everything. We have this thing. So this is a challenging part. You have to deal with that. But there's a lot of positive things related to teaching Judaism, and that's actually a vehicle of my success as a rabbi. One of the main vehicles that I offered a Talmud class in our community in Bet Shalom. And we have a group of more than 10 people coming regularly for a year and a half to study Talmud every week. This is when I share this story with other rabbis in Los Angeles, they say it's unbelievable. It doesn't happen. And I made it happen. And that's a part of my mission to shift a little bit of demographics of our community for into more intellectual. And I think that's a great idea for generally community building, and I wonder, I think it's a wonderful idea in terms of building Polish Jewish community is to focus on education and what Judaism offers as guidelines, moral guidelines, and spiritual guidelines, and guardrails for Polish people, Polish Jews today. We face the fundamental problem. The state institutions don't fulfill their roles anymore. Their institutional religions are in shambles, and every authority is questioned. Every moral authority in our societies in the West is questioned now. It's been like that for like 2 decades, but we reached some point in which and it's not technically there's nothing bad in questioning traditional moral teachings, and everyone goes through this period in their life, but people need answers. People need guidelines. People need to know what to do, and people need to distinguish between good and evil. This distinction is not gone. It's never been. And especially in difficult, turbulent times, people need to rely on something, on some teachings. And here is the area where Judaism can step in and should. And that's I observed in my work that it's fundamentally important to learn what our tradition tells, what our tradition uh, speaks about, and the, the whole moral universe of Judaism is extremely sophisticated and at the same time is extremely grounded. And this can help many people to make right choices in their lives and right decisions. And that's why we instituted a conversion class with the basics of Judaism. And that's why also it's important to learn a lot of other things, including Jewish history, like Turning Points, the program we are starting. We already started in Poland, and I will be doing this as a series of lectures in my community as well, which will be live streamed. I just wanted to mention one more thing. What is specific in terms of Jewish spirituality? It's not the only way to achieve that goal, but um, Judaism makes us more social. Uh,
Menachem, I don't want you to get off track now from from that question. I do want to recognize that we're coming to the close of your time, and I want
yes.
to encourage you to, of course, we're looking forward to your lectures in the forum, Turning Points in Jewish History, that will be taught in Polish. But the fact that you will be offering this to people in English, a number of people heard the first class that was offered by our colleague Mati Kirschenbaum, who we hope will be a guest on in this forum, Freighted Legacies. At this point, I just want to thank you for
Thank
all
you.
you do and your continued support for developing not only Jewish life in Long Beach, which is your main job. And I've been privileged to be a guest at your congregation and to hear and see the wonderful work you're doing, but also your continuing work with developing the progressive Polish Jewish community, um, especially through this current class called Turning Points in Jewish History. I want to turn now, after I thank you, to just inviting people to know that coming up in March um, 23, we will begin a conversation that is actually something that is of significance to Freighted Legacy. I'm showing here the work of distinguished Rabbi Professor Dr. James Diamond, who is about to publish his book, Raging Hasidic Sermons of Rabbi Kalonymus Kalman Shapira. There is on our website a short précis of one of the discussions that Rabbi Diamond has uh, written. I urge you to uh, be looking for the webinar coming up on March 23rd. Read in advance, if you can, the material. And we'll just note for people that this is part of two um, uh, sets of programs that we're doing. Um, and the second one will be in April, where we will, excuse me for scrolling the wrong way, um, be hearing on April 27th, again from the Ringelblum archive. This is the archive that was remarkably preserved and led by Dr. Uh, Ringelblum, Emmanuel Ringelblum, and one of the people that buried their testimony in the archive was Rochel Auerbach, whose book has recently been translated. Um, Her book is entitled Warsaw Testament, recently translated by Dr. Sam Kossoff. And these two programs, the one with Dr. Diamond and the Dr. Kossoff, make up a unique contribution created with great effort of people who were in the Warsaw Ghetto at moments before the ghetto uprising and its destruction. Their works were buried, uh, discovered after the war in 1946 and 1950, and we're going to have a discussion of these two legacies from Warsaw. So I invite you to join our program, Freighted Legacies. We have a monthly series, and you can refer to our website for more information. Um, and uh, this is an opportunity for us to again thank. Uh, uh, I like the title, uh, Dr. Rabbi Menachem Mirski, for his leadership, and we've had an insight into his work. We look forward to hearing from his colleagues, Miriam Klimova, who will have an interesting story to tell us in the future, as well as Mati Kirschbaum, who is just down the freeway from where Menachem is. I want to wish you um, uh, about oh, there's a question here. Yes, the turning points that Menachem will be teaching will be in Polish for those who are seeking the Polish version, and we'll get the information to you so you'll be able to follow the ones that are be done in English. Um, yes, we hope that you'll enjoy that. Um, and I want to thank Menachem again for coming out of his sick bed and participating. Uh, Thank you all for participating in today's forum. Menachem, refuah shlema and regards to Rivka.